So just to be very clear, I'm speaking here as the former CEO of CLC and entirely in my entirely private capacity. So if anybody has any grief, you can talk to me, but you can't talk to CLC. Just so we're clear about that. I'm very impressed, I have to say. I was here last year when we were in the other room, and that was already quite a big crew. But what I'm seeing here is just incredible. And I'm also very impressed by how well Vodacom is supporting this. It's a worthy effort. Thanks to my broadband and to Vodacom for making this happen. So, how's it? That's about the only thing I know. But I find it a wonderful way of starting a conversation. Because you can always sort of see how, some people react on it very coolly, some others are like, what do you mean, how can you talk like this? But what it is actually, it's sort of an easy way in. And what I'm trying to do today is, I'm actually trying to start with a slightly difficult way in, which gets me to my next slide. Those of you that were as shocked as I was on the 5th of October of this year may know the guy who wrote this quote, Stuart Brand. He wrote this in the first edition on the first page of the Whole Earth catalog, which was very dear to Steve Jobs. And it was written in 1968. And I find it incredibly prescient and relevant for today. A realm of intimate personal power is developing. Power of the individual to conduct his own education, find his own inspiration, shape his own environment, and share his adventures with whoever is interested. So I don't know if the last part is Twitter or if it's Facebook, but it certainly has something about it. And I think it's sort of, that was 68. When we are looking at it today, we're 2011, and boy has the world come forward, and I do believe it has made a huge step forward, not least because of the guy who passed on the 5th of October. Without Steve Jobs saying he's not content with the status quo, he thinks it can be done better, I think we wouldn't be talking today the way we are talking. The iPhone is probably the most impressive invention ever since the invention of this thing here, without the Bluetooth. And when you go home, maybe give it a minute of thought and say thanks to that guy. I certainly do, and I've certainly learned a lot from him. So that said, my most beloved motto is change is good. And change is happening. And it's happening at a speed and in a way that, quite frankly, I think most of us probably couldn't have imagined. So last year around this time, we had one operator with HSPA+. Today we have 3 operators, or 4, and one of them is trialing LTE, the other one is trialing LTE as well. But as we heard earlier, LTE without frequency, without spectrum, is a no-go. But it's quite impressive how a little bit of competition can get things moving. Last year, we had about 50% 3G coverage, and we've just heard from Peter, and I know from other people as well, we're talking 80+% coverage and possibly more by the end of this year. That actually makes South Africa one of the best covered countries in the world, believe it or not. So for those that are always whining about infrastructure in this place, stop whining on this part. It is very impressive and is actually a testimony to the industry and, quite frankly, the consumers that this is possible. Last year around this time, we had 1 tablet, and now we have 100+ tablets. And I think that the tablets, particularly the ones in the 5-inch to 7-inch arena, will be the ones that are exceedingly relevant for the African subcontinent, or for the sub-Saharan subcontinent, and particularly for South Africa. And I'll talk about that more later. And what we've seen, and I think that is a very impressive thing, not only are we seeing tremendous competition from Android phones in terms of features, in terms of every single possible bell and whistle, but what we're also seeing is a tremendous price fight. We're seeing that right now on phones, but we're starting to see it also on the tablet space. So when you think about it, when Apple launched the iPad 2 just in February or March this year, they made a quite big discount already to the first one. So at $499, it's actually the lowest priced 10-inch tablet, which is actually why they are selling more of those tablets than anybody else, because they're getting the better, people are getting the better offer. Then, and I think that's very relevant, Amazon entered the market, having been watching from the sideline and lining their ducks up in a very impressive way. And they launched the the Amazon Kindle Fire. I don't know how that you would pronounce that, AKF or something like this, AKF1, AKF2. Maybe, Peter, you can help me. You seem to be good with acronyms. At $199. That's a 7-inch tablet, but it's a 7-inch tablet that rocks because it has a fantastic ecosystem behind it. And just recently, the Indians have launched Akash, which stands for Sky, for $60. It's an Android 2.2 device. It has GPRS. It can be upgraded to 3G. It works, and it's only $60. And it's real. It's no longer vaporware. It's very real. And you can be very sure with this device out there, our friends from ZTE and Huawei will be coming very soon with similar devices. So we're seeing a tremendous decrease in pricing on the devices. We're seeing a tremendously bigger and better coverage in terms of speed, in terms of throughput, and also in terms of overall population coverage. Last year we had two ecosystems. Android with Google and Apple with their whole world. We now have three ecosystems. Amazon entering, and I'm saying it again, and I think it's extremely relevant. Amazon is actually the biggest cloud operator in the world. They know the cloud probably better than anybody else, and that includes Google and that includes Apple. And these guys moving in with all the things they have in the background in terms of digital goods is very impressive. And today we will hear more about Nokia and their Windows phones. And I do believe that Windows and Microsoft will try to put together an ecosystem as well. So all of a sudden we have 4 ecosystems. Very exciting. A little scary for operators because these OTT guys, over the top, they're bound to kind of annoy us. But I don't think we have to be worried about that. I think we have to embrace these people. We have to work with them. And the nice thing is we have choice now. So if Apple doesn't want to play ball, we can go to Google. If Google doesn't want to play ball, we can go to Amazon. If Amazon doesn't play ball, we can go to Microsoft. So I think there's going to be very exciting things happening in the next couple of years. I already said it, Amazon making a major move. I think this is extremely relevant. So what does this all mean? I think you said it's about 5 billion connected devices. Intel thinks it's around about 4 billion connected devices today. But it doesn't matter, give or take a billion, it's not a big deal. And you will see why I say that. Intel is predicting the following growth curve for connected devices in billions. From around about 4 billion today, maybe after Christmas it's 5 billion, to 15 billion by 2015. That's in 4 years from now. To 50 billion by 2020. And that does not include machine-to-machine devices, at least in their way. That is just unbelievable. And that means we're facing a huge dilemma, because what do these connected devices do? They create traffic. And who creates the traffic? It's us. 48 hours of video uploaded per minute every single day of the year onto YouTube. 200 million tweets per day on Twitter. And that's not iMessage or BBM or whatever. 7.5 billion photos per month on Facebook alone, which, by the way, is the biggest photo platform in the world today. And you look at these numbers, you look at these things, and anybody who runs a network, runs a data center, goes exceedingly scared. Traffic goes literally ballistic. Last year, 2010, again according to Intel, we transmitted globally 245 exabytes. Yanni will know what that is in real bytes, but I don't, but ask Yanni. That is more traffic in 1 year, in 2010, than the entire traffic we've ever recorded before on the internet. And Intel has an interesting vision on that one, which again is very exciting, but also a bit scary. If it consumes electricity, it's going to end up computing. And if it's computing, it will be connected to the internet. So what we need is electricity and bandwidth galore. Hopefully, we can go by the electricity part, because hopefully we'll start actually using solar power, which is something that is, at least in South Africa, we have in abundance. But it's a very exciting world we're moving into. And some predictions in terms of the growth curve for South Africa are looking like this. That was the mobile penetration growth that we've seen. So from 96 to around about, and these are not multi-SIMs, these are sort of, kind of users that have a device or more devices. We go, literally, we can see a very strong growth. And if you now look at the similar curve underneath from 06, more or less when we started with 3G in this country, and we go to 2022, we will see exactly the same curve, possibly a little faster. So what are the consequences for us as the industry, for us as consumers, and for the government and for everybody else who's interested in getting us connected? Number one, very simple, very basic. We need to improve permitting processes right now. Connectivity is as important as electricity. So whatever we do, we need to figure out a way that we can build the kind of structures that we need faster with fewer processes. When I was a CLC, we had some sites we get permitted within 6 weeks. We have other sites that haven't been permitted in 6 years. That is not something you can plan with and you can work with. It's impossible. We need to consider one physical network. That means we should possibly, and Peter was the first one to say it publicly, we should consider what we do going forward. Do we have to build 4 separate physical networks? Or are we actually better off to have one single network, and then we have logical compartmentalization if you want? And I think it's very urgent that we talk about this. Other countries are a lot further in this. We need to build data centers. We cannot, Peter right now and his team are shooting 1.5 gigs of capacity to London just on BlackBerry. We will not be able to sustain that. We're getting a lot more connectivity, that is true, but also redundancy is an issue. And one of the big problems that RIM has is that they don't have redundancy. They have one data center in London, they have another one in Ontario, and that's it. Not good enough. We also need to build fiber optics wherever possible, and we need to be willing to swap capacity. Very critical. And we need to go rural. Still, only 60%, maybe 60+% of South African population is actually urbanized, living in urban centers. The rest is still living outside in the countryside. We cannot forget about this. And as an industry and as a press, we should be very careful calling for fiber to the home before we actually have covered the rural South Africans so that they can participate in what we're doing. They can educate themselves, they can learn, they can do stuff, they can do commerce, they can do whatever we do in an internet economy. And finally, we need frequencies now. I'm very happy to see that the former Minister of Telecoms is now moving into public services, so maybe there's something we can talk about in terms of getting things speed up on the public services side. I'm also very happy that his vice is moving to to the monitoring units, so maybe they can monitor speed of permits. But the problem is, if we don't have a minister who can take decisions and drives things, and the Prime Minister was actually very good at this, we have a real problem. And I'm hoping that somebody in the union building is hearing us, because we need those frequencies now and not in 3 or 4 or 5 years. They are extremely relevant. So, all that said, all is good, right? It's fine. That's an industry view. We grow. It's all good. Well, this title of my speech is Beyond Broadband. And I'm an alien. I'm a foreigner. I'm District 9 or whatever. But you South Africans have a way of getting under people's skin, and you definitely got under my skin. I like this country. I really do. And I'm very worried. We have a couple of problems, but we have one major problem. Let's have a look at this. In 1994, we had a GINI coefficient, which is a coefficient that tells you how well or uneven income is distributed in a country, of 59. In 2005, we have a GINI coefficient of 65. Now, going up in this case doesn't mean it's better. It's worse. Denmark, Switzerland, Germany, they have GINI coefficients around 30 to 35. Here we have one major issue. We have another issue. We have a population mix in South Africa where we have 18.2 million people under 18. Give or take 20 million. Out of which 9 million are between 10 and 19. Make that 10 million. We have youth unemployment in South Africa of 48.15%. People that are employable and are willing to work between 15 and 25 years. It is scary to think that only Armenia and Bosnia, fresh out of a civil war, have higher youth unemployment than we do. We're number 3 in the world in this statistic. So some people talk about a potential time bomb. Well, let's have a look. Maybe it's not that well to see, but that's the North African part of Africa. And we've seen what happened there in recent months. And it can go well in the case of Tunisia, where they essentially overthrew the gentleman who was running the country in February, and they've just successfully completed the first democratic elections. Impressive. But it can go fast. And not always does it go the way like it does in Tunisia. This is not a potential time bomb, ladies and gentlemen. This is a ticking time bomb. These folks there, and the ones that look a little older, they deserve better. They deserve a lot better than having a Gini coefficient that goes up rather than going down. Education is key. Absolutely key. Some countries have seen that. Finland and Switzerland were very poor rural countries. Switzerland before the Second World War wasn't the Switzerland we know of today. It was very poor. And they made a huge drive towards better education. Finland, the same thing. Switzerland and Finland are rating constantly at the very top when it comes to education. And look where they rate in terms of competitiveness on a global scale. At the very top. So in case you didn't see where Finland is, where Switzerland is, now you know. Sorry. Let's look at Asia. Korea, South Korea, and Taiwan. Interesting to note that before the Korean War, North Korea was the wealthy part. South Korea were the poor cousins. South Korea started a couple of years ago, around about 15 years ago, to say we want to drive internet and we're going to drive education. Without this, Samsung wouldn't be possible, and many other Korean companies. Taiwan, same thing. Every single kid in Taiwan has a tablet computer. Every single one of them, today. So what's lacking in South Africa? What's lacking to have education that works, where you don't just build schools and you build property and plant, but you actually plant something in people's minds? Access, content, teachers, tutors, community, and investment. Let's have a look at these. Access, we will have nationwide broadband coverage. 80+% now, hopefully 90% by the end of the year, and more. Not an issue. With government intervention, we'll have it faster, and it will be sustainable. And if operators work together, we'll have it even faster. The idea of one network, where you don't build 4 separate networks, but you build one, and everybody, uses the capacity. Access in terms of devices. 7 inches is what I call the African form factor, AFF. You can easily pocket it. You don't need anything to carry it. At $60, or as in India, at $35, where $25 are being subsidized by the Indian government, it doesn't look so bad. I was not capable of finding the price for a school book in this country, or how much this government is spending on schools and particularly on books. But at $60, $35, it's not impossible. Not at all. Content. There's a wonderful thing done by one single guy up until recently. It's called the Khan Academy. It is the most astonishing idea. This guy was a trader, one of those nasty investment bankers that are making us pay up money, at least in Europe now. And he stopped doing that. He said, what do I want to be when I'm 80? Do I want to say I made a lot of money? Or do I want to say I made a difference? And he decided he wants to make a difference. So he was teaching his cousins and daughter and whatever, math and science and how to read and other things. And he started realizing that he couldn't do it one day because he wasn't there. So he did it, I don't know how he did it, but via the internet with a little pad, and essentially he did a recording for her. And she loved it. So he started saying, wait a minute, if she loves it, then maybe more kids love it. So Khan Academy today is probably the single most impressive thing out there in terms of getting content to people and to kids. And it covers a huge variety of issues, and it is very easy to understand. And I will show you how easy it is. Even I understand that. Let's see if that works.
We have the equation -16 is equal to x over 4 plus 2, and we need to solve for x. So really just need to isolate the x variable on one side of this equation, and the best way to do that is first to isolate this whole x over 4 term from all of the other terms. So in order to do that, let's get rid of this 2, and the best way to get rid of that 2 is to subtract it. But if we want to subtract it from the right hand side, we also have to subtract it from the left hand side, because this is an equation. If this is equal to that, anything we do to that, we also have to do to this. So let's subtract 2 from both sides. So you subtract 2 from the right, subtract 2 from the left, and we get, on the left-hand side, -16 minus 2 is -18, and then that is equal to x over 4, and then we have positive 2 minus 2, which is just going to be 0. So we don't even have to write that. I could write just a plus 0, but I think that's a little unnecessary. And so we have negative 18 is equal to x over 4. And our whole goal here is to isolate the x, to solve for the x. And the best way we could do that, if we have x over 4 here, if we multiply that by 4, we're just going to have an x. So we can multiply that by 4. But once again, this is an equation. Anything you do to the right-hand side, you have to do to the left-hand side, and vice versa. So if we multiply the right-hand side by 4, we also have to multiply the left-hand side by 4. So we get 4 times negative 18 is equal to x over 4 times 4. The x over 4 times 4, that cancels out. You divide something by 4 and multiply by 4. You're just going to be left with nx. And on the other side, 4 times negative 18. Let's see, that's 40. Well, let's just write it out. So 18 times 4, if we were to multiply 18 times 4, 4 times 8 is 32. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 72. But this is negative 18 times 4, so it's negative 72. So x is equal to negative 72. And if we want to check it, we can just substitute it back into that original equation. So let's do that. Let's substitute this into the original equation. So the original equation was negative 16 is equal to, instead of writing x, I'm going to write negative 72.
So I think you get the gist. Now imagine this for almost every conceivable subject in school, but in particular for math, which is one of the problems that we have in this country. We have too few math teachers, and the ones that we have may not be willing or able to explain it that easily. I'm actually using this with my daughters, and I find it quite amazing how easy my girls learn stuff from Khan Academy that they don't learn in school. This is available, if you want, today on the internet. It's supported by actually Bill Gates, who is a huge fan of this thing and actually is putting a lot of money in from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It's also supported by Google, and from all I know, it's also supported by Jeff Bezos. So the nice thing is we have 3 ecosystems: Microsoft, Google, and Amazon that are supporting this. So maybe we can talk to them about devices. The point is that it is there today. We just need to look at it much harder and make it happen. Then I hear, oh, well, we have a problem with the teachers union, etc., etc. Difficult thing. You know what? I personally believe very strongly that teachers are just like any other human being, just better, because they do things that we would never have the patience for. And they want to, very simply, be connected, just like everybody else. And they want to have fun, i.e. when they're not in school, they want to be like normal human beings. And they want to feel that what they're doing is worthy and earns them a living. But if you're a teacher, you already have, it's a vocation, not a vacation. Next thing is tutors and community. How about bundling this with connections? How about saying, yes, you can have the latest BlackBerry XYZ, but you have to spend a little money extra to subsidize a device for kids. Maybe you can subsidize some of the connectivity. Or maybe you can just help by being a tutor. How many mobile customers do we have in this country? I think around about 40 million, give or take, 45 million. Peter, help me here. 45 million people that already have a mobile phone, and they love to change to new phones. Let's put a little incentive there. Something that says, hey, you can do something. And this country does something. No country in the world has ever done what South Africa has done in 1994, 1995. Let's push that a little further. Investment. Well, it's interesting, right? I couldn't actually get any precise figures for the South African defense budget. But from all I know, it oscillates anywhere between 40 to 60 billion rands a year. 40 to 60 billion rands a year. Last I checked, Namibia isn't really a major risk. Botswana, neither. Zim will hopefully solve itself soon. I think it's called aging. And Moz seems to have a good time growing. In Lesotho, I think we got them in the bag. Just saying. Nice to have a look at it. Yesterday, our finance minister announced that he had to revise the GDP figures down a little bit from, I don't know, 3.5% to 3.1% growth. But he assured everybody that that was not a problem because the government would be spending 800 billion rands on infrastructure projects over the next 3 years. So I don't know who's good in math after the Khan Academy. We have round about, give or take, 12 million pupils in this country, give or take. At, let's say, $50, how much is that? Any answers? It's about 600 million. Well, so it's six times 12 is 72, right? No? So it's about $720 million. Well, that would give unnecessarily a pad to every single pupil, and then some. So I think the answer is not there, but I think it's worth having a thought and thinking about it. When you think about what's happening in Europe right now, where the government, the governments and the EU are talking about 400 trillion euros for a bailout of Greece and other countries, then we have to say, if this was a financial crisis, we probably would be willing to spend a lot of money, right? But it's only an educational crisis. Well, that's much worse than a financial crisis. This is what this country's future is dependent on. And I think we should look at this very seriously. One little hint to government. Frederick the Great, one of the better kings of Prussia, had this wonderful saying. He said, "An educated people can be easily governed." You're not dealing with a mob, you're dealing with educated people. Good to know. And investment, the private sector must engage. Not only the mobile operators. What about the banks? What about the insurers? What about retailers? What about automotive? Everybody has to look at this. And again, a nice little quote from Victor Hugo. He who opens a school door closes a prison. He knew that in 1700 something. We seem to have forgotten about it. So what do we need to do? We need to focus on education. We need to create, we need to create a national platform. We need to deploy massive resources. And I salute you, Peter, for saying we were willing to spend 20 million rands on an educational initiative. I think it's a great start. And I think other operators should do just as you are doing, but I think it's a very small start. I think it has to be a lot more. And we need to drive a large-scale rollout. And we need to see this as something of supreme urgency. It's now because we can do it. Just a year ago, it was inconceivable. We didn't have the access, we didn't have the devices, we didn't have the content. A lot of these things are no longer roadblocks. I would hope that we can do that. And to end on a more amusing note, I think all of you know MasterCard, right? So how about this as an ad? Apple iPad, $499. Amazon Kindle Fire, $199. India's Akash, $35. Enabling learners in SA, priceless. Thank you.